Good morning and good evening, everyone. I'm Alessandro Palombo, and I'm with Filipe Eusebio. Hi, Filipe. How are you doing?
Hi, Ale. How you doing? Good? Yeah.
Actually, all well. I'm recording these from China, so I hope the connection will be strong enough. But if that's not the case, the important thing is that your connection is going to be quite
Yeah.
solid today. I would say let's get into it. I have been speaking of you on across all the channels so much, so at this point, I'm quite excited to introduce to our audience Filipe. I would like to start with a very brief introduction about yourself. So I met you many times. I visited your firm. How would you introduce Anna Bruno and your own experience in the immigration field to somebody that has never heard of you or Anna Bruno?
Okay. So Ana Bruno is a relatively small law firm, medium to the Portuguese standards. We are a team of 30 dedicated to multiple areas of law, from corporate to tax. We assist a lot of international investors coming into Portugal. And then immigration became a part of it. Actually, I've been here since the very beginning of my career. I was a trainee lawyer here at the firm, and I'm today the managing partner of the firm. An immigration case was my first case as a trainee lawyer, and it just grew into me. And then when the government launched the golden visa, it was a perfect suit for us, as we were hand-holding so many international investors into the country, that immigration, as it is always a part, or can be always a part of an investment process, for us the golden visa was a perfect match. So the business grew inside the firm. There was an immigration department growing bigger each year because of the golden visa and all the residency programs into Portugal. And nowadays it's a very good and big department of the firm. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. I just very briefly, as always, I say when it comes to immigration and to golden visas or visas, I think it's very important to partner up with a law firm. Why? Because law firms have a dedicated history in a specific country. They address every day from different angles so many issues affecting eventual individuals or companies. And when I met essentially Filipe, I immediately saw the opportunity of partnering up. You've been doing immigration law for I think 20 years, if I'm right. And
Yeah.
would you
Yep.
mind to share also a few data about how many visa procedures did your firm actually assisted so far, and maybe right now is currently managing? Is this something you can share?
I can, of course. Yeah. So only on golden visas we reached 700 recently. On the other types of D visas, we are about 2,000, maybe around that. So it's a big part of the firm business. And we've actually, the other day, we've tried to ascertain where our clients coming from, and we had a world map in front of us, and they're coming from everywhere. And it's exciting to see so many people interested into residency programs, being the golden visa or any type of D visas into Portugal. It's exciting for us. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I'm asking this to you just because, in my view, it's important to start this very detailed interview, also letting our audience to weight your opinion. Why? Because sometimes technical expertise is great, but I don't think it can really be an effective substitute of concrete practice. And you did a lot of it. I would say, let's get now into the more practical side. I have more than, I think, 13 questions. The first one is actually going to be asking you a brief overview of the immigration system in Portugal in relation with golden visas. If you can tell a bit how this all actually vertical was born in the country, which are the principles, and in general, how it works.
Okay. Back in 2012, when the program was created, it came as an answer to the depression we were under, intervened by the IMF. So the golden visa was in many ways a way to attract investment into Portugal that normally would not come to our country. The program was amazing and still is amazing, but the timings were outstanding back then. So I was able to, from investment date until the card was issued, I had an average waiting time of about 6 months. And this was, by then, the program was not as successful as it is today, but by then it was relatively quick to provide a residency permit to to the investors. Then COVID came and all these timings exploded. Actually, I think COVID was a big lesson for everybody, and especially for the immigration sector, because it demonstrated in many ways the importance of the freedom that a residency card in another country provides to you, and ultimately the freedom that a second passport provides to you. COVID was in many ways a very big motivator for people to engage into immigration programs. The problem was that COVID stopped almost everything. Portuguese residency permits are always based on appointments for biometric data collection. Of course, from March 2020 almost until the end of 2020, there were no appointments, though a big backlog was created. And in conjunction with it, there was a big volume of new applications coming into the system. So we reached today with 400,000 pending applications in all residency programs, just inside the system, with the government announcing about 2 weeks ago that within 1 year they will clear the entire 400,000 applications and then regain a more normal procedure on approving and ultimately granting residency permits into residency applicants. So that's where we are right now. If you ask me, to explain a little bit about the process, you, of course, on a golden visa angle, have to select an investment from the eligible ones. Right now, we have several options, being the most successful, of course, the venture capital funds, because the real estate purchase options were taken out from the program last year. Right now, the momentum I'm seeing is that people are looking at investment funds, investing at least €500,000 into these funds, purchasing the participation units of these funds, and then you are able to submit, once you get the necessary documents, you are able to submit the application online. Once you submit the application online, generally in 2 or 3 days, you get notified to pay an analysis fee, which we pay. It's around €600, something like that, and then you wait, and it's a big wait, because it's supposed that the government or the immigration authorities by then would analyze your case, and they will, but taking roughly 12 to 18 months to do that. Okay, so it's a long waiting period for people who have invested a lot of money into the country. And if an investor came today and without the information we received from the government 2 weeks ago, I would say that you would have to wait until you get the actual physical card, around 24 months, maybe a bit more. Okay, with the announcement that the government made, I'm optimistic by nature, but I became even more optimistic because if they are clearing the system of the 400,000 cases that are there, it means that my clients submitting today are the 24 months I provide as an expected timeline will be decreasing over time, meaning that the more empty the system becomes, the faster the authorities will be able to analyze files. So these 24 months may become 18, probably 18 first, then 16, then 14, and will gain some momentum, I believe, in this and on how fast the authorities can analyze these cases. Okay, that to quickly describe you the moment. So for someone who is not aware of how it is processed, as I mentioned, you submit the application, you pay an analysis fee, then you get notified to select a date to come to Portugal and do the biometric data collection meeting at the immigration authorities, which is the only moment actually that you have to be here in presence. We are able to do all the previous moments remotely by getting a tax ID, opening a bank account, deploying the investment. We act on power of attorney, so the client can be in his country just overviewing, of course, but we'll be hands-on, boots on the ground, taking care of everything. So after biometric data collection, the client will just wait then for the cards to be issued. Before the cards are issued, you need to pay the immigration authority fee per applicant, okay, per person that is on the application. And that's it. You'll then receive the cards and you are able to use this residency permit, which is a temporary residency permit valid for 2 years and revalidated for 2 years to enter enter Portugal, actually enter any Schengen territory. Okay.
Fantastic. You've been super clear. You addressed also a bit of actually the upcoming questions, but that's great. This is exactly how we should do it. So you've been super clear. Let me just add maybe one very side note super quickly, just for remarking a very clear point, but occasionally there is somebody arriving at Unbound Fund with this question. So Unbound Fund can receive investments in fiat money or fiat currency, and specifically in euro. This is the only way, to be very short, that Unbound Fund is capable of receiving an investment as per the current status quo and legislative system. Okay. So with all this clarified, I think you touched very well all the points. You explained very well how there has been essentially around the COVID time, very severe, I would say, backlog in terms of visa processing time. And this generated essentially inefficiency. And that's why sometimes there are people out there who still have a maybe bad memory or a bad experience in terms of their visa procedure for Portugal. As you correctly summarized, things are changing. The government has taken steps and a public commitment in reducing the enormous backlog. And that's why also together for Unbound Fund, we always tell everybody we can't guarantee you 12 months or 14 months, but given the recent changes, we are moderately optimistic, and we believe that as for those ones applying this month or the upcoming month, the total duration will be, in our view at least, and without being able to give a warranty for it, it will be shorter. So this is the great recap. Thank you for it. Let's now on the requirements for applying for the Golden Visa, specifically in terms of physical presence in the country. How does it work?
For the application, as I mentioned, you don't need to be here. We submit everything on behalf of clients as a law firm. We're legal representatives of the client, so we are able to deliver everything. Then you need to come for biometric data collection. We cannot substitute you. So you'll be collecting, they'll be collecting at immigration authorities your fingerprints, your picture, and your signature. That ultimately will be your identification towards the Portuguese system. And then once you receive the card, there's an obligation to spend 14 days. Actually, the law is, the situation is easy going for the clients. But what the law says is that you need to spend 7 days in the initial duration of the card and 14 days after the renewals. The initial duration used to be 1 year. Now it's 2 years. Okay. So in the first duration of the card, you can actually spend just 7 days. I would recommend people to come and spend longer periods of time here because the country is really amazing. It's a great destination for vacation and spend time and to be here. But in a nutshell, on the first duration of the card, which is 2 years, you need to spend 7 days. And then upon renewals, you need to spend 14 days in each period of 2 years. Okay. You can spend the 14 days or the 7 days as you wish, meaning that you can spend 3 days and then go away and then come back and spend the extra 4. It's up to you. Okay. Generally, the vast majority of our clients, what they do is they do the full stretch in Portugal on vacation with the family, and they run around the country and they tell us amazing stories. Just had a client who did a bike ride from north to south, and it was amazing. He sent me pictures of the entire route. It was amazing. And people normally take those periods during vacation with the family. Okay, so that's the requirement on the Golden Visa in terms of periods of stay and presence in Portugal.
Fantastic. Very brief bonus question. So let's say that I'm going to invest in a private equity fund and I'm going to start spending time in the country. How does it work? Is your firm going to help me understanding which documents I need to save and archive in order to prove how many days I've been in the country?
Yeah. So normally, yes. And actually, we are keepers of those documents. So I have lots of files with receipts from coffees or airplane tickets and everything. So normally you prove it with your passport, with a stamp on the passport. But it may happen that as you have the residency permit, or you could enter through another country in the Schengen. Let's say you entered through Paris or whatever. What we recommend to the clients is to save the airplane tickets and any invoices of expenses you've done here, like the hotel that you've taken, or I don't know, a restaurant where you've been. In Portugal, people always ask you if you want to give your tax ID when you drink something or you eat something. Provide the tax ID and then keep the receipt, and then leave it with us because we'll be keeping all those documents. They will be kept just in case if the immigration authorities ask you to prove that you've effectively been here for the minimum periods that they require. You'll be able then to show documentally that you have everything, that you have been here. Okay.
Fantastic. Super clear. Let's move to another question, which actually regards the family members. So let's say I'm John, I want to become an investor, and I'm interested in bringing my wife with me in this application. So which family members are allowed to somehow co-apply with me? And specifically, can I bring my parents?
Yes. The spouse, of course, okay, and your children, but your children need to be dependent, meaning that they need to be studying and they need to be single. It becomes a bit tricky when your children are already 23, 24, 25. Okay, we can apply for family reunification, but it's sometimes then hard to demand a 25-year-old not to get married and to not to work. Okay, so it becomes a stretch for once you reach a certain once your children reach a certain age. Then, because on renewals you always need to prove the single status and the dependency status. Okay, so it becomes a little bit harder as the children are older, and much easier, of course, once the children are smaller. Then you can reunite adopted children, of course, and there are special situations in the law where you can reunite other family members in special situations. So let's say you were married first time, so you have children from your first marriage, okay, and you marry the second time, and your spouse has children from another marriage, okay. Those children from another marriage can also be reunited to the application, okay. So in a case-by-case basis, we are certain which family members can be reunited. Parents can be reunited. Under 65, they should prove dependency on you, okay. So you should have evidence, solid evidence, that first, your parents don't have enough income to support themselves, and second, that you are actually supporting them, that you provide them with some money every month, that you are welcoming them in your house, okay. So stuff like that. Over 65, the immigration authorities normally don't ask for this sort of documents. They immediately assume that your parents are dependent on you, okay. So this is in brief, the family reunification files that that you are able to do. You can reunite as many family members that you want. We have a client that has 8 children and reunited the entire 8 children, of course. It was a funny case because we had to take everything to the immigration authorities in a minivan. So it was interesting. And yeah, and that's it's a very welcoming program from that perspective as well. Yeah.
Let me jump in so we remove immediately one doubt. So in the case of your client, 8 children, did he invest perhaps 4 million, so 500K per child, or
No,
no?
well, only one investment. He actually invested in a property back then. He was spent 500,000 in a new property here in Lisbon, and he was able, of course, from that investment to provide the golden visa to the entire family. Okay.
That's fantastic. So this is one of those rare cases, I think, where having more kids, it actually becomes cost convenient, right? Instead of no, just kidding. Question. I am not married, but I have been in a relationship with my girlfriend and eventually fiance for a couple of years. How does it work? Do I need to marry her or him in order to apply to bring her or him under the application, or no?
It's always easier if you're married because you just show a marriage certificate to the immigration authorities. Okay. If you're not married, we need to prove the union. The best way to do it would be by some state entity, some governmental entity. Actually, in Portugal, you can certify a union through the government. They attest that you live together in communion of assets and under the same roof, and you are able to attest that. For the immigration authorities, as long as we can attest that you have the same address, ideally, if you have a governmental entity attesting the union, perfect. Otherwise, we need to go and show that you live in the same address, that you share common assets, some things like that. Okay, but it's possible. Okay, it's more demanding. Yeah, we prefer married clients. It's more easygoing, and sometimes I suggest clients to just get married. But if you're not married, we're still able to do it. It just requires more documents. Okay.
Fantastic. Now, a couple of more detailed questions. So let's say that I have two children and they are maybe, I don't know, 7 and 9 years old. Now, are they going to, do they need to learn Portuguese for the language test?
To become Portuguese in the future?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a very good question, because right now what we're doing is, once parents reach citizenship status, meaning after 5 years, what we're doing is registering the parents as Portuguese and then applying for the children as children of Portuguese people. Okay. And we find this is the best way to go. Okay. We don't advise to do it when the children is reaching 18. Okay, so if you're on the verge, your children is on the verge of reaching 18, then you should apply or can apply on his own. Okay, and in those cases, then we suggest the Portuguese learning. Otherwise, no, because we'll just bridge the children through the parents, and it's a very convenient process.
Great point, and thanks for clarifying, because again, these are questions that or you ask them to the right person working on these matters every day, or you won't find clarity at least online. So thank you so much. I believe this is really valuable information for everybody listening. Now another, actually, these are more, again, technical detailed questions, but is it possible to change investments during an ongoing golden visa procedure? Let's say that I invested 3 years ago in a real estate fund or whatever else, and for any reason, I don't know, this fund is being, maybe it comes to its conclusion or not. Can I change it, or am I going to lose my
No.
accrued right to citizenship?
Yeah, you can change it, but I'm very, how shall I put it? I'm very thorough with the law, meaning that I only suggest, I only allow my clients, it's more than a suggestion, is actually, I don't allow my clients to do the second investment. They can only do the second investment if they maintain the first one for at least, I don't know, until the moment they are able to prove they did the second one. I'll tell you why. In the moment you apply for the golden visa, you commit to maintain your investment for a period of 5 years. If along the way you sell one to buy the other, there was a moment, even 5 minutes, where you were out of the investment. You sold one to then apply the money in the other. So the money was in your pocket, not invested into the country. So I don't take any risks on that or gambles. What I always suggest is go on and buy the second one. You cannot lower the threshold, meaning that if you've invested before an amount and they are now the amount is now lower, you cannot do that. Let's say you've put 1 million into a bank deposit, which was allowed in the past, or 1.5 million. You cannot just now put 500,000 in a fund. That won't be eligible. Okay, you need to maintain the threshold you committed to, but you can invest, of course, 1 million or 1.5 million in a venture capital fund. Just don't use the same money selling the first investment to then do the second investment and only afterwards sell the first one. Okay, this is my rule. Okay, just not to take any chances.
Fantastic. It makes a lot of sense. Now, another question, which is in this case touching a bit those ones currently having a D7 visa. Is it possible for them, if they want to invest in a fund like a bound fund, to switch to a golden visa from the current existing D7? And if yes, how does it work?
You can. You submit an application for the golden visa, as I've explained. You do it online, but then there will be a moment where the immigration authorities will come to you and say, you have to choose. You cannot have both. Okay. So you need then to let go, to formalize that you're giving up on the D visa that you had before, which can be a D7, a D8, whatever, and on giving up on the first one in order to be granted a second one. Okay. It's interesting because actually the time that you've gained as a resident on under the D7 will then, even if there's a stop in the D7 and then you engage into a golden visa, everything will be counted towards citizenship. Okay. So there's no need to start the clock of the 5 years again. The citizenship law is very clear, saying that you can accumulate residency periods and then gain a full 5-year residency status in order to apply for citizenship. Okay.
Fantastic and very clear. Now, a more pragmatical actually question for you and your firm. When it comes to the legal costs that you charge to the client and your fees, how do you typically charge them? Do you charge them all up front, or do you maybe dilute them over a specific time frame?
Yeah, never upfront. There's if it was clients that we knew before, that we had cases before, that we built a relationship of trust, probably, or I could negotiate that with the clients. But we're talking about clients that never seen my face before. It's the first time we're working together, so never upfront. Where I charge upfront, and normally is a retainer to 50%, something like that, in the beginning of the application, and then the remaining once it's submitted, everything has been successfully done. Even though I have more work ahead, because I do follow-ups with the IMA, with immigration authorities, and with the clients. We came up with a system of interacting with the clients on a monthly basis, even if nothing has happened, because we understand that if you're somewhere, I don't know, in Beijing, not knowing exactly what's happening in Portugal, after making such a large investment, it's important that the persons that should take care of your application communicate with you. And we do that very regularly with all of our clients. Okay. It's sometimes a bit extreme, a lot of emails flowing, but we found out it's reassuring for the client that they know that someone's here taking care of things, and the file is ongoing and we're not disappearing. We're here in Lisbon and looking after their matters and everything that's going on. Okay.
Fantastic. So I think we are arriving almost to the end of this list of questions. Let's discuss now about different nationalities and whether there are some specific nationality that maybe have a higher degree of friction somehow in applying. And specifically, but not only, can Russian citizens right now apply to the Golden Visa program in Portugal?
They can. So when I told you before that I have clients from all over the world, it helped me a lot to learn what are the main difficulties depending where you're coming from. Okay. So there are no constraints. There was a suspension for Russian clients, which was pretty much absurd, but there wasn't a suspension on the analysis of Russian clients' applications in the Golden Visa. That suspension has been lifted, doesn't exist anymore. The constraints right now are not in the immigration sector, meaning that Portugal doesn't discriminate between your origin in order for you to apply for a residency program, whatever that residency program is. What we find is that for banks, some nationalities are harder and you need a bank account, okay? Especially on funds, because you need then to deposit your participation units in a bank account owned by you. And what the constraints right now are on my Russian clients, Iranian clients, and Iraqi clients. We have been approached many times, and we have now ongoing cases where we're trying to open bank accounts, trying to sort out solutions with banks. For instance, with Russian clients, there's a sanction from the EU that doesn't allow a Russian citizen to hold more than 100,000 euro in a bank account. It becomes difficult to convince the banks on opening the bank accounts to deposit the participation units, and that's a fight we're going through right now with some banks here. But on the immigration side, no discrimination whatsoever. Okay, and I've made in the past a golden visa for Russian clients, Iranian clients, Iraqi clients. It was okay. The thing is that bank compliance is becoming more and more extreme as we go, and sometimes we have harder times with the banking sector in order to open these bank accounts for clients.
Great. Actually, this is the last question, and this is going to be a super pro level question. I think it should be discussed on a case by case basis, but if you can just bring some maybe high level, if light on this topic, it would be great. So
Sure.
let's say I am applying to the Golden Visa program. My parents are at this point elderly, maybe they are in their 70s, and in the next 6 years they will become progressively older and older. So what does happen in case one of them has some essentially limitations in moving, and does he need necessarily to spend time in the country, or is there any way they can be justified given some eventually health conditions?
Yeah, it should be certain on a case by case basis. I'm always very preventive in those situations, meaning that if you are unable to come and you have no and you have no perspective on when you'll be able to come, we should inform the immigration authorities immediately. And we've done that in the past, actually, not only for golden visa, but for other types of residency permits. So we send an email, we communicate with immigration authorities, and we explain and prove, preferably with documentation, that the person is unable to comply with the minimum periods of stay. Normally, eligible justifications would be work and health, and you send them in advance. I just did that for an American client. She needs to go to the US and spend 3 months there. She's going to be breaching, she's a D7, she's going to be breaching her D7 obligations. So what we did in terms of stay, was sending in advance an email to the immigration authorities justifying, and actually she's going to be there on special venue for her company, and we've attached all the documentation that has been produced, the invitation, etc., to the immigration authorities. So we are preventive in those situations by explaining to the immigration authorities that the person cannot comply with the minimum periods of stay according to the law. If you cannot be preventive, then it becomes a justification process, meaning that you apply for the renewal. If the renewal is denied based on the fact that you were not here, you should then justify the absence, doing it afterwards, and eventually ending up in court by justifying that you could not inform in advance, etc. We did that for a Chinese client. She had the perfect justification, which was COVID. She didn't inform in advance that she was not able to travel at all, and the immigration authorities wouldn't renew her application. What we did was going to court and explaining the situation in court, and we got granted the possibility of her renewing the golden visa, but it had to be through court. So I hate going to court. Sometimes we have to go, and in this case it was absolutely a must, because it was the only way that she could achieve the result that she was looking for, which was the renewal of the card. Okay.
Super clear, Filipe, and thank you so much. I would like to close up with a couple of notes, which are, as everyone listening to this video podcast actually probably realize, when it comes to immigration and citizenships, especially the Portuguese/European one, we are talking of very complex topics, and this is a serious commitment. And as I always say in my content, this is not an easy or quick procedure based only on investing, but it requires a certain degree of commitment. In listening to Filipe, I think the most interesting part is actually hearing you, Filipe, to talk about your previous cases or current cases, and in the end, this is what it means to actually be on the ground every day fighting for, in this case, the rights of people that are compliantly investing in the country in order to also become citizens. And I'm very happy to work together, and I look forward to provide together the best experience possible to anyone interested in joining the program. And thank you so much again. And maybe in the future we will do round 2 of questions. Online, I mean, we are constantly receiving questions of any kind. So thank you so much again, and looking forward to round 2.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.